Hi everyone, this is Tuplex, and welcome back to the next chapter in the adventure on this base. I just finished up last week the 2500 SPM series, and that was fairly successful. If we look at our science pack consumption statistics, if I can get these guys to hold still for a minute, you can see we've been doing 2,500 a minute for the last 10 hours at least. A little bit more than 10 hours, closer to 13, with very little variation. So I would say that this is a good indicator that the build that we did was successful at achieving its objective. And what we're going to do next for a bigger challenge is to go up to 10,000 per minute. Well, and actually we're going to go higher than that. I'm going to build another base that makes 10,000 a minute that will run alongside this one that will continue to make 2,500 a minute. So actually we'll be making 12,500 science a minute once everything is up and running. So this is the 2.5K base. If you haven't seen that series, you might want to watch it first, or at least watch the last episode where I do a base tour and I talk about the design, because we're going to carry over a lot of the design elements of this base into the next one. Okay. The new one is going to go over here, and I've already started to build the grid. I haven't made a whole lot of progress yet, but I'll start building that grid. Now, the current grid is 7 by 7. So I've got 49 grid squares. Many of those are taken up by depots. I've got an empty one here. 2 of them are occupied by my mall. One of them is occupied by my module factory. So those 49 squares was more than enough to accommodate this base. Probably could have done it with less if I was a little more space conscious, but in any case, it's working well. And I'll continue to leave it running so that we can keep boosting our mining productivity. We're up to level 54 right now, which gives us productivity of 530%. So that means that for every one mining cycle, I'm getting 6.3 pieces of ore. So the mining is going pretty quick. And you can see here as, you know, the trains are starting to fill up pretty fast. Let's see if I can find one that's 13K, 14K. Right, so the mining is going like gangbusters. And with that much productivity, the ore patches should last for quite a while. Right, you can see how fast the ore goes into these train wagons. Quite satisfying, and it'll continue to grow. So I'm going to start to build the new base. I am going to make a few changes. And the new one will be 13 by 13, right? So I've laid this out. This is a representation of the new grid. So this is kind of the master plan for the base. I've started doing some planning, and I'll do some of that planning on screen until we've got it all done, and then it'll just be a matter of going in and building up all the grid, right? So each of these constant combinators represents one grid square. As you can see, they're numbered from 1 to 13 from left to right, and 1 to 13 from bottom to top, so that we can, I don't know, we can identify them by coordinates if we have to, but probably won't be terribly necessary. So I've already just started to do a little bit of planning. So I'm going to have depots for ores down here at the bottom for copper and iron. I've determined that a ratio of 6 to 5 iron to copper should be good. That's what I've got here. So we'll be making some iron, a bunch of copper plates, a bunch of steel plates, green circuits. These are all the factories that take ore directly. And then those will go into depots, along with depots for water and oil. moving up to the refineries. Once we have plates and green circuits, we can do red and green science. And that's as far as I've gotten. I'm working in Factorio Planner, or Factory Planner. Now I've used the Planner website as well. The good thing about that is that it deals with oil pretty well, whereas this planner I haven't still figured out how to do oil properly. But I decided to try to use Factory Planner to put in all the science packs and see what I come up with, and most of the numbers I'm seeing here correspond to what I saw on the website. So I'll probably use both just to try to keep things, to make sure that I'm not making any mistakes here in Factory Planner. I mean, I trust the calculations here. I just don't trust my ability to use this mod correctly. So that's why I'm sort of double checking. But I started with the science packs. I'm not going to do military science this time. I'll just do the 6 that we use for mining productivity. Just because the military science seems like just kind of a waste, since I'm not using any military items. There's no biters on the map. So I started with those 6 science packs, and then I broke it down into all the constituent ingredients. Now I may end up redoing this because this does have the ability for you to break down the ingredients for each section, depending on the sequence that you start clicking on things. I've got it so that everything is, or most things are summed together. So for example, batteries, this is what we need to make for everywhere that batteries are used. Not necessarily just for one place or another, but this gives us our totals. And like I said, these numbers correspond well with what I see on the website that I normally use. I did start to break things down here when we get to circuits, right? So since green circuits take ore directly, we can see this is the total of green circuits that we need. And then after already having some iron plate up here, I clicked on this iron plate. So this tells me now what we need smelting wise just for the green circuits, and how much ore we need. And then again here, this tells me exactly what we need for steel. And then what's left over, all the iron plate for the rest of the base. We only need 81,000 items a minute, which surprisingly works out to just 2 smelting arrays. Right? These are the smelting arrays that I'm using now. Right, and I have 3 in this base, and the depot is always full, so the fact that we only need 2, I suppose, makes sense, but we'll see. So based on that, that's how I'm setting up this plan, right? So two making iron plate, and these iron plates will be used to make gears and pipes and all that stuff elsewhere in the base. But this doesn't include any iron plates for steel or green circuits, which is where most of the iron ore is going to be going. Copper plate, I've got 8 sections making copper plate. And that's in addition to the copper plate that's going to get made to make the green circuits. Excuse me. 11 making steel, which, again, seemed like a lot to me, but I checked the numbers and it seems to be correct. And then 10 grid sections making green circuits. And then I'll have a couple of depots on each side for these various items, just one for iron since there's only 2 grid sections feeding that one. And then I thought this would be a good place to bring in water and oil. I figure we're going to need 8 refinery grid sections like the one that I have now, so it's 8 times 16 refineries. Again, I don't trust this number so much, but the Factorio calculator website tells me I need 121 refineries. So 121 divided by 16 is 7.56. Okay, so with 8 we should be good. And then I'll continue the planning process up through the production chain. Pardon me again. All right, so what I want to do by defining the layout in advance is to make sure that things are placed as close as possible to where they're going to be needed. Right, so I've got all these depots for ores, and these are only going to need to feed the first or the next 3 rows of the grid. Right, so these trains won't have to travel very far from the depot. And because of this location, what I'd like to do is set up all my mining to be, you know, down here, perhaps off to the side a little bit, so that we don't have to travel far from the mines to get to these depots, right? And as well, I'd like to try to get my water and my oil from as close to this row as possible, perhaps off to this side. I might even be able to do some on this side because I do have a lot of water here. So I could probably do water on this side and then maybe oil on the other side of the grid. Right, and here I'm just getting started. I mean, I've got 7 here, so I still have another 6 to go in that direction, and then upwards. So this grid is going to be roughly 4 times the size of our current one, which is 7 by 7. And that makes sense since we're looking for 4 times the output. But I think I'll still have a lot of empty grid squares. So once I finish the planning and get this layout done, I will attempt to compress it, make it more compact, and squeeze it down into a corner to see if I can remove any rows or columns from the grid when I'm done. Now, you know, for the things like steel, smelting, green circuits, these are all builds that essentially take up the entire grid section, right? So for those items, my plan is just to copy these designs and build them over here in the appropriate location and the appropriate quantities. But when it comes to other things, for example, red science, I'm pretty confident that I can quadruple this build in one grid section. Same with green science. I think I can make 4 times as much in a single grid section, right? So for things like that, I'm going to challenge myself to put them into a single grid section. So I'm not necessarily just going to build 4 times this. I mean, I will in terms of total output, but I'm not just going to copy every grid section 4 times over here. Because that would be kind of wasteful, and it would also not be terribly interesting, I don't think. Right, so sulfur and batteries and stuff, this I can probably fit all in one section, right? So the smaller builds I'm going to try to consolidate into a single grid if I can. For rockets, I think I'm going to need 16 rocket silos to make this happen. Let's see here. Yeah, see, the planner is telling me I need 11.7 rocket silos. That's if I've got 14 beacons around it. I planned for 14 beacons because when I take a look at the rocket silo, it's 9 by 9. If I surround... Let me get away from there to escape the noise. If I surround each one by beacons, but I'm going to need to leave at least 4 tiles open for belts to come in. Well, maybe I don't. I could always do undergrounds and jump over a beacon. Maybe I can do that. But anyway, with 14, I'm not going to be able to get it down to 8, no matter what I do, right? So if it's not 8, then it has to be 16, so that I can maintain my parallel factory concept, right? Satellite production is going to have to increase, but I think what I might do this time is have a dedicated grid cell just to build the satellites, and then bring the satellites by train to the rocket silos. I don't know. We'll see. I might be able to increase. Yeah, I'm not going to have enough room, I don't think, to make 4 times as many satellites and have 2 silos in each of these columns. So I'll probably have a dedicated build for satellites, and then take that to where the rockets are launching. Okay, so that's to be continued, but we don't necessarily have to do it all at once. We've got, there's already plenty here that we can start to work on. Again, setting up the mining and stuff is probably what I should do first, because none of the rest of this makes any difference if I don't have raw materials coming in. Now, the next change that I want to make, one thing that was a bit of a challenge, especially in cases where I've got more than just 2 or 3 ingredients coming in, was routing all the belts from these 8 cargo wagons to each of the production columns. Yeah, like this could probably jump straight across, Of course, when I first built this, I had yellow belts, so it wasn't always possible. But in any case, what I thought would be better is if I could line up the train wagons with each column better, then I won't have to do so much of this stuff where I'm all compressed into one area and then I have to fan out to the sides, right? That becomes particularly difficult, in areas like this, right? So that could be, this is kind of a mess. So that could be greatly simplified if I could line up the wagons with each individual column. So this is what I came up with. So using the same size train, right? I've still got 4 locomotives and 8 wagons. If I set them up 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 instead of 4 and then 8, then each wagon is not exactly aligned, but pretty closely aligned with each of the columns of production. So my plan is to use this train configuration on the new base. But where this could be an issue is for my mining, right? Since I think it's better to have all the mining close together, which is what I get with the current 4-8 trains, like this. Because then I can mine into a train on a smaller patch. And because I have such a high level of mining productivity, I wanted to try pardon me, I have a bit of an itchy throat. I wanted to try to do the mining without creating my own ore patches like I did in the last part of the series. Because having a high level mining productivity means that my ore patches are going to give me more than 5 times as much ore as what the game says is there, right? Since I'm getting so much free ore from the productivity boost. So I'd like to try that, but then I'm not able to tailor the size of the ore patch to match my trains, right? So I'm going to need to find some big patches like these, and then I'll see if they're big enough that I can fit a train like this on there and get all the mining drills on it. Then I'll do that. If not, then my other option would be to use 4/8 trains for mining and to use 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2 trains everywhere else. And that wouldn't be the end of the world, right? It wouldn't be a big problem. That just means that the inputs for all my smelting areas would be like this, and the inputs and outputs for everything else would be 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2. Okay, which wouldn't be too bad. Yeah, so we'll see how well the trains fit onto these ore patches and decide what to come up with. As part of the calculator, I'm able to calculate actually how many drills I need. So now that I've got everything, by looking up at the ingredients, you can see that I've got everything broken down to ores and raw fluids, right? So this is what tells me that I've got every single component in the build broken down to raw ingredients, since this is telling me the only ingredients I need are the harvestable items. So if I click on iron ore, for example, this is now going to sum up everywhere that iron ore is called for, which is going to be steel, green circuits, and iron plate. That tells me I need 591,000 a minute. 3K drills. This is taking my current level of mining productivity into account. I can add in my speed modules, and then I can add in the fact that I've got 3 beacons on each drill, which we can check here. Right, 1, 2, 3, affecting this drill. 1, 2, 3, affecting that drill. Right, so we've got 3 beacons on each drill. And this tells me I need 769 mining drills. And then if each train, let me pull up my calculator, 769, and then if each train takes 4 drills times 8 wagons, 32 drills, that means I'm going to need about 24 trains carrying iron ore, and I'll probably go for a lot more than that, just so, because, you know, to account for transit times and things like that, because the drills, in my case, the drills are only going to run when the train is in the station, right? So I should probably plan on, let's say, double the number of trains that the calculator would indicate, right? So 769 drills on iron. We could make the same calculation for copper. 615. We can do the same for stone, and again for coal. And then this will tell me when I have enough mining set up. Okay, so stone and coal are pretty simple. For water, can I do water? Yeah, I can. And this will tell me how many pumps I need. 20 pumps. Awesome. And for oil, okay. Well, I guess it won't work for oil. You can't do pump jacks, which makes sense because that depends. Oil output depends directly on the individual patch, right? What the yield is on each patch. So I suppose it makes sense that I can't use the planner for that. We'll just have to figure that one out. Okay. So that's the planner. And I think I'm going to take another stab at this and see if I can break it down so that each item that has its own sub-factory. So for example, for blue science packs, well, this is blue science packs. It's just a matter of bringing in items by train. But like purple science packs, for example, I'm making the rail, I'm making the furnaces and the productivity modules in there. So it would be a good idea if I had all those grouped together, and so forth. So I'll try to rebuild it so that it's all broken down and grouped together like that. But for now, this helps, and I can always just create a new subfactory for each item as we go to build it. All right, so that's the train system. I started by looking, initially my first idea was to use 8/16 trains. But here's the issue. You know, the grid squares are a good size for 8 trains, or for trains that are 12 items long. Because they're basically double the size of a single train. So a train can get through the 4-way junctions, and it'll fit between that junction and the entrance and exit points for the most part, which is good to prevent gridlock. So if I were to double the size of the trains, I would also pretty much need to double the size of each grid section, so that I can maintain that distance between junctions. And my stackers would have to be twice as long, which is another reason why I would have to double, because here the stacker fits in 1/2 of the grid, right? So if I doubled the train size, the stackers would have to grow twice as big. So then the grids would be twice as tall and twice as wide. And then the problem I run into, if I go twice as tall, for example, is that the way this is designed, if I were to make this twice as tall, for example, twice as wide is not a problem, right? Because I'm going to have twice as many wagons coming in to feed it. But to make it twice as tall, then I would need 4 belts of ore coming in here, because 2 blue belts of ore would not make it all the way to the end if this was twice as tall. So now I have to figure out how to get 2 more belts of ore squeezed in through here. I would need to figure out how to get 2 more belts of plates coming out of each column. And I think it would just become a big problem. So that's why I decided ultimately that I don't really want to increase the size of the grids themselves, because that would make the actual production build that much harder. You know, I mean, maybe we could do something like have multiples, you know, like maybe have one of these twice as wide, have one on the bottom and another one on the top. You know, something like that might work, but then you're essentially talking about having two grids in one, you know. So ultimately I said, well, we'll keep the grids the same. We'll keep the total length of the trains the same. We will manage the additional traffic by spreading things out and putting things close to where they need to go, so that we can reduce traffic as much as possible. And I think that'll be okay. Right. Alexi's base, which was the original inspiration for this one, was making 5,000 a minute with the same trains and grid layout that you see here, and he didn't have any problems with traffic. So I think if we're smart about it, we should be able to double the size and still keep everything under control. Okay, so that's about it as far as the overall plan for the base. Again, I'll continue to work on this, on the layout of all the grids, and hopefully I can have that ready to share in the next episode. If not, we can certainly get started on building up some of the mining and the depots and smelting, right? Since we need to do all that first anyway. Speaking of smelting, I wanted to talk about this a little bit. There was a Reddit post of somebody. You know, I don't even recall what the original post was, but somebody had posted in there. Oh, it was about unloading ore into a smelting column, and you know, the speed of the unloaders. Right. So somebody had correctly commented that you don't need a fully saturated blue belt going in with ore in order to get a fully saturated blue belt coming out with plates, because you get the productivity bonus from the modules in your furnaces. Right. And then somebody replied and said, you know, I don't use productivity modules in my smelters. I use speed modules instead, because then you need fewer furnaces. And since you're already getting a lot of mining productivity, it's not really that necessary. And I thought about that. At first it didn't seem right, and then I gave it some thought, and I said, well, you know, maybe this guy's on to something, because we're getting a 540% productivity bonus on the mining. But I'm only getting a 20% productivity bonus on the furnace. Right? So 20% compared to 540 is really not that significant. So I thought, well, what's the harm if we just ignore this 20% productivity bonus? We're still getting 540%. And then maybe we can speed things up and use fewer furnaces. So after the first thought, it seemed like a good idea. It seemed like the guy might be onto something. Just use speed modules on all the furnaces instead of productivity. But then I started looking at the numbers, and I was surprised to find out that it's actually faster when you use the productivity modules, which seems counterintuitive since these are giving you a speed penalty. But as it works out, when you have each furnace surrounded by 12 beacons, and only with 12 beacons, it does work out to be faster with productivity. So take a look at this. So here are 3 furnaces with no beacons affecting them. Okay, this one with no modules, it has a crafting speed of 2. You put in speed modules, and you get 100% bonus on that crafting speed of 2, which gives you a crafting speed of 4. With the productivity modules, you take a 30% penalty, which gives you a crafting speed of 1.4, but then you get a productivity bonus of 20%. So if we take the 1.4 multiplied by 1.2, that gives you an effective crafting speed of 1.68, right? Which is much less than this one, and even less than the unmodified machine. So that all makes sense. But then when you start looking at the effective beacons, it didn't work precisely the way that I would have guessed. So let's look at this one. Again, with no modules in it, crafting speed is 14 instead of 2. It's plus 600%. So we're getting a 50% speed bonus from each of these beacons times 12. That gives us 600% bonus. So the crafting speed is 14 because we started with 2, and then we add 600% times 2. That gives us a total of 14. Okay. With the speed modules, the crafting speed is 16. Right? It's not 4 times 6. Or it's not 4 plus 4 times 6. It's 4 plus 2 times 6. right? Because the beacons only affect the base speed of the machine, not the modified speed of the machine, if that makes sense. So all this plus 600 bonus from the beacons works on the base crafting speed of 2, right? So here we get the original 2 plus 2 more from the speed beacons that are inside of it, plus the 600% bonus from all these beacons, which gives us a crafting speed of 16. Right, so it's not twice as fast as this one. It's only marginally faster than this one, because the speed modules in the machine only work to give you another 100% bonus on top of the 600% that you're already getting. And then same thing here. When you look at the one with the productivity modules, crafting speed is 13.4. Because you get the 1.4 of the original machine plus 570, or you get a 570 bonus. So another way to look at this would be you get the 2 crafting speed of the base machine plus 600% from the beacons minus the 30% penalty. Right, so that 30% speed penalty doesn't stack with all these beacons. It's subtracted at the very end. So 14 on this one, 13.4 on this one. It's the same difference in speed as there is between this one and this one. But once you add the effect of all the beacons, it's not such a big difference anymore. So now this machine with a 13.4 crafting speed, now getting a 20% productivity bonus. So if we multiply 13.4 times 1.2, we get 16.08 effective crafting speed, which is actually just a little bit faster than this one that has 16. So to make a long story short, if you're using 12 beacons, you're better off using productivity modules, not only because it'll be faster, but also because you're going to be consuming 20% less ore that way, which means that you're going to need 20% fewer trains coming in to feed it. So with a fully beacon setup like this, you're always better off using productivity modules in the furnaces rather than speed modules. Now for steel, we only have 10 beacons per machine, right? So for steel, it would be faster to use speed modules instead of productivity. But then you're going to lose not only the productivity bonus to make the iron plates, but also the productivity bonus to make the steel plates. And I think that's not worth it. So ultimately, my decision here in this base is I'm using productivity modules everywhere I can. And I'll boost the speed with speed modules. And if that means that at the end of the day, I need some more furnaces or more production machines, then so be it. I'm willing. I'm not necessarily trying to minimize the amount of machines, but having high productivity means using fewer inputs, and that means less train traffic. And the train traffic concerns me more than the quantity of machines or the number of grid squares that I'm going to fill up does. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, so research now. I decided to add another level of worker robot speed. This one is taking 128K science packs. The next level is going to take 256. So I'm going to switch back to mining productivity after that. Mining productivity increases by 2,000 every level. Or maybe it's a little more than 2,000. Yeah, here it goes up by 3. I forget what the What was the original? 3 was 1,000. Let's see. 250, 500, 1,000. And then I think after that, maybe it goes up by 1,000 every time. No, it's more than that. But anyway, it increases by a fixed amount every time, whereas the robot speed doubles every time. So that's why it's cheaper to advance mining productivity a lot. But generally what I'll do is I'll do mining productivity until the next level is more expensive than the next level of robot speed. And then I'll do robot speed, and then I'll go back to mining productivity. So between those two, I'll just do the less expensive of whichever one is available. And we can actually set up auto research to do that for us. So if we set it up to do mining productivity and robot speed using the cheap strategy, only research queued, and then it's doing mining productivity 55, which is 130. Why is it doing that? Maybe it's because I have them in the queue. Does this mean it's always going to prioritize mining productivity until it's all done, which it never will be? Okay. So maybe I'm not going to be able to use that. I'll have to do it manually. Okay, well, I think that's going to do it for today. Please let me know your comments. I'm probably going to wait another day or two before I make the next episode, since I have to do some more planning. And I also want to have a chance to hear feedback from all of you on what my plan is, because I'm sure some of you will have good suggestions that I may want to implement into my build. So I will see you in a couple days. Thanks a lot for watching. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.